Good.
Brilliant. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining me this morning to discuss advancing pre-construction. It's great to have you here today. Before we ask any questions, it would be great if you could please just introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself and the company.
Sure. No, good morning. Good morning. So my name is Paul Kirchhoff. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Epsilon Industries. We're an offsite constructor of modular prefabricated central utility systems. Think like boiler plants, chiller plants, that sort of thing. We've been in the business about 20 years, actually over 20 years, serving customers all throughout North America. I joined the company about 5 years ago, but I've been in this industry my entire career. Started as a mechanical consulting engineer, also spent a lot of time with a major OEM and also in the traditional kind of construction management business, but always focus on kind of this mechanical electrical infrastructure space that we're in.
That's great. And today we're just going to really have a quick interview to discuss advancing pre-construction as well as the work you are doing. But my first question is actually, I guess to kickstart the interview is, does Epsilon see an increase in the use of expectation meetings at the beginning of a project to really set expectations of all the players?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, but probably not enough. I think it's happening more often, primarily because project teams are getting more involved in like these less traditional delivery models, right? Like design assist, which we're going to be talking about at the conference in Phoenix. Anyone who's been involved in design assist knows it can go really well if everybody knows like what they're supposed to do and when they're supposed to do it. But those same delivery models, like design assist, they can actually underperform, right? When certain people actually maybe don't know what they're supposed to do, and they fall back into more traditional roles, which is tough. One good example that we run into not infrequently is, let's say there's a design engineer that's on the project team early in the pre-construction phase, where Epsilon has also been engaged to do like a design assist on let's say a modular central utility plant. Since that engineer often remains the engineer of record on a project, it's natural that they kind of assume, okay, they got to be driving all the details of that plant like they would normally do on a project. The trick is that, of course, the project team engaged the offsite constructor primarily because we're the ones who are going to lay that plan out. We're the based on input from the engineer of record, of course, so that plant is spatially efficient, laid out inside. It's configured to be shipped. Shippable and shipping cost effectively, and ultimately is like maintainable and serviceable, right? So striking that balance on who does what can be really important. We've actually gone so far as to create like these detailed matrices of typical projects that we're involved in to use as discussion points when, say, we're talking with folks on the team who might be setting up those sort of those expectation meetings you were talking about, right? A lot of us think visually in this business. So having a matrix that sort of shows who's doing what at what stage, it can be really helpful to get the team thinking about the life cycle of that project. Using that example, I had of like the engineer of record being tempted, right? They want to get really involved in that design of the central utility plant. We've actually found that it can actually work out really well. Everyone can kind of figure out how that works once a certain level of trust is established with the design assist team. And that expectation meeting you were talking about can go a long way to setting that up. So I think that works well.
Wow. I guess, the other question is that it looks like you'll be talking about supply chain volatility and how to manage it better. And I'm sure that's on everyone's mind. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so supply chain volatility, every project, right, is struggling with that. It was a theme last year, and it's a theme this year as well. Particularly when these projects require major capital equipment. For us, it's electrical switchgear and large chillers. The lead times on that type of equipment, as everyone knows, it's gone from like the traditional, 10, 12 weeks to maybe now 30, 50, 70 weeks or more. And that is playing havoc with owner schedules, right? Since these systems that we're talking about are often in the critical path to getting these projects online. The nice thing about design assist, which again, we're going to be talking about in Phoenix, is that it provides a way for the project team to get a specialist, an expert offsite constructor on board early while the design is still being developed. And that delivers almost like a two-pronged benefit, right? One, if you pick the right partner, that offsite constructor's got their finger on the pulse of the supply chain, right? For electrical switchgear or chillers or whatever happens to be lagging because they buy so much of it from all the major manufacturers. So the project team actually can really take advantage of a lot of like real-time data on delivery risk when they're thinking about, okay, what vendor do we really maybe source major capital equipment from? So that's a big benefit from that perspective. But another one is, getting that offsite constructor on board as a design assist partner, it sets up the job to be able to make decisions earlier on the major equipment. So we're talking about compressing timelines. So while the lead time on a given thing might be really long, you're able to pull the trigger on that equipment way earlier, weeks or even sometimes months earlier than you would have otherwise been able to do it if you would kind of waited to buy the major capital equipment along with sort of more traditional site packages, right? That in turn can often really compress timelines on these project schedules, sometimes even taking the central utility systems out of the critical path, which can get everyone actually breathing a lot easier. And that's a good thing.
I can imagine. We're also hearing a lot about the possibility of a recession and how that might affect the construction industry. How is your team looking at the general market forecast, and are you considering how to weather a possible recession?
Yeah, we are monitoring the general state of the economy pretty regularly. I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, it's not easy to read the tea leaves, right? And I don't think it's as simple as like we are in a recession or we are not in a recession. I would say, over the past 6 months, our team has definitely seen a slowdown in the decision-making process on these larger capital projects that we're supporting. We know that factors like, rising interest rates and the access to cash, that is definitely playing into how organizations are moving forward with these long-term leases or the larger construction projects. But we also, from our perspective, we know there is a fundamental demand for growth in some of the core markets that we ultimately serve. I mean, it's focused on healthcare, pharmaceuticals, automotive, particularly like the electric vehicle industry. Those projects are still moving forward, even if it's maybe not as smooth as we would like. But I'll tell you, the other overriding factor we consider when we think about weathering a recession is fundamental changes that are happening in this industry, that are required, right? That need to happen, and that sort of transcend cyclical ups and downs. I'll give you an example. Like so much is said these days about the aging demographic in construction and what that's doing, right? The need to figure out how to do more with less traditional skilled trades. That's pushing more and more project teams, owners, construction managers to look at offsite constructors like us and pulling them into projects very early, right? To figure out how do we do more work offsite to do more with less, right? So there's a dynamic that's in play in parallel with some of these other things that people are wrestling with. All that being said, Kazala, we continue to invest to support the growth that we believe is a long-term prospect based on this long-term demand. Now, as an offsite constructor, that's not a decision that we take lightly. I mean, we build large modular systems, which means we have big factories with big cranes and automated welding machines and huge paint booths and that sort of thing. So we're in the process actually right now of getting our third production facility up and online down in Alabama. And we chose that location, strategically, kind of based on where we see growth regionally and where our customers are that are driving the growth. So it's an exciting time to be part of the industry because we believe in it long term. So we're investing accordingly, even as we're watching to sort of see how the market is shifting over maybe the short and medium term.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. It's great to hear kind of the markets that are booming at the moment. I mean, we will have a number of speakers and panels at this conference that also talk about design assist as a project delivery method. And that's obviously a big focus of your session as well. So could you tell us a little bit more about design assist specifically and how it addresses cost certainty and schedule acceleration?
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about schedule acceleration already here today, and we're going to be talking more about that in Phoenix, obviously. A lot of that is addressing long lead times on equipment. It's interesting. Schedule acceleration can provide cost savings that some project teams may not even recognize yet because they haven't kind of been through the process. So we're going to talk more about that in Phoenix. I think that's pretty cool. The things we're hearing back from project teams sort of in that feedback loop around the projects that we've been involved with. But you mentioned cost certainty, right? And that's also a big factor. And actually, probably one of the primary reasons that a lot of project teams are pulling offsite constructors into projects really early. When you sign up a company that specializes in offsite construction of a particular piece or scope of a project, you can look to them to provide really tight pricing on scopes very early in the design development process. And then look to them to give the project team like total visibility into how that pricing might change as the team is adjusting, scopes and schedules and that sort of thing. That's probably one of the biggest benefits that project teams see in the design assist process, especially for construction managers and owners, since cost certainty, again, can be such a wild card this day. If they can lock that stuff down with certain major components, that's a good thing for them.
Brilliant. I guess then my final question is, this is Epsilon's third or fourth appearance at the Advancing Preconstruction Conference. So it looks like your team does see value in attending. Could you share some reasons as to why it's been a conference that you guys keep returning to?
Yeah, no, good question. I mean, all of Hanson Wade, this Advancing Construction program, right? All of these conferences are really good in that they are focused on, particular stages or phases of the industry and the challenges that project teams face in those stages. And this one, Advancing Pre-Construction, this is certainly no exception, right? There's so much talk about pre-construction in our industry now. It's a stage that deserves a real deep dive, I think, right? Since it's that time when so many key decisions are being made. The irony, though, is it's also that stage in the process that can be really resistant to change or evolution, right? And I say this as a former, consulting engineer and construction manager, you're involved in these teams. They're moving so fast. They're under so much cost and schedule pressure that doing things can be perceived as maybe a luxury they can't afford, right? Again, that's ironic because we have to be doing things differently if we want to, tackle these challenges we're up against. So again, this conference, it's great because it gets people from the right roles, from the right companies all together talking about these sort of shared challenges and hearing best practices and whatnot. It's a fantastic opportunity, and that's what this conference does, and that's why we keep coming back, Azala.
Brilliant. Well, that's great news, and we're really excited to welcome you back in Phoenix in May. So thank you so much for your time today, Paul. It's great to hear from you and the way in which your team are currently working, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the conference.
Likewise, thank you.